Hello, everyone. My name is Jess Brooks. I work for Nevada Department of Wildlife. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's topic is on owls. I do have about 1 more minute until we get started. So I am just going to hang out just a little bit longer, give everyone a chance to tune in, adjust my screen, make sure everyone can see everything properly, and then we will get started. So hang tight, hang out with me here, and we'll get started in just a couple seconds. Okay, it is officially 2 o'clock. I think we're going to get started. Thank you again for joining us. We all very much appreciate all of you guys tuning in to these webinars. I know it can sometimes be difficult to be cooped up in your house, but we are staying home for Nevada. Today's topic will be on owls. I just want to remind everyone that this is a conservation education program. This is a family-friendly program and is rated PG. There is some interactive moments with the presentation. There's a question and answer box that you guys can ask questions at any time. I do have a moderator. Her name is Lauren. She is watching with us. And if you have questions at any point, type them in. Miss Lauren will be getting back to you. I won't be able to see those questions. There's also a chat box. So at the very top or the bottom of your screen, depending on how you have your setup, there will be an option for that Q&A box and that chat box. Right now, the chat box is turned off. However, I'll be turning it on periodically and asking everyone some questions. But this is important because this is a PG rated webinar. Everything needs to be appropriate for PG. If not, we can remove you, and we don't want to do that. So let's hop in. Like I said before, my name is Jess Brooks. I work for the Nevada Department of Wildlife. Today we're going to be talking about owls, specifically Nevada's owls. I will be leaving my video camera on my face the whole time so that you can see me. There we go. Sorry about that. My contact information is on this main screen. It will also be on the last screen. And if you have questions at any time, go ahead and pop those into the Q&A box. And Lauren, the moderator, will be getting back to you. So we are going to be talking about what is an owl. Obviously, we do have some history with misunderstanding nocturnal animals. An owl is a nocturnal animal. With this misunderstanding, we do have some culture developing. We can form some fears and scary stories. For example, we do have the story of the banshee. If you don't know about the story of the banshee, I will not share it here. It is a little scary, but please Google it, please look it up. The story of the banshee came from a barn owl and people not knowing what the animal was. So they developed the story behind it, and culture has shaped how these stories will be carried on from misunderstanding what owls are, how they live their lives, how they hunt. We do have owls here in Nevada. We have quite a few, actually. They're all very cool. They're all very awesome. And during the presentation, I want everyone to think about when you see owls. Are they scary? Are they cute? Do you see them in the middle of the desert when you're out exploring? Do you see them, do you see them in their neighborhoods? What sort of sounds do they make, and what makes owls so special? We are going to be looking at some of their body adaptations and some of their hunting skills and things like that. So owls are extremely focused. Throughout the presentation, we're going to be talking about a lot of things, but my challenge for you guys is to stay focused, pay attention, and follow along. Right now would be a great time to grab a sheet of paper and a pencil, because there are some questions I'm going to be asking everyone. We're going to be explaining this phenomenon. So on your screen, there should be a very focused owl sitting on someone's hand with a blue sheet behind him or her. And the owl is moving its head back and forth and up and down. Owls can also move their head almost all the way around. So if you do have a sheet of paper and a pencil, my challenge right now is to come up with an explanation for this phenomenon. And there will be two. There are two explanations. The first one is, I think owls can move their heads so much because it helps them blank. And this is your chance to fill that in. The second explanation is owls have special adapted body parts that help them move their heads so much. They are blank. There are several. I am going to leave this screen up here just for a couple seconds. I will ask that you don't ask Lauren the answers because we're going to be learning what those explanations are. I just want you guys to be involved, follow along, participate, and I thought that this would be a really fun way to do that. So grab your sheet and paper. We're going to be discussing this a little bit more later on in the presentation, but let's move forward. So all wildlife needs certain things to survive, 4 things to be exact. They need food, water, shelter, and space. These things make up animals' habitat. Here's a close-up picture of an owl living in its habitat, but wildlife need each other too. So they not only need food, water, shelter, and space, but they also need other plants and animals, and this makes up their ecosystem. This ecosystem is super complex. There are things like food chains and food webs that we'll look at a little bit later as well, but they do need each other in order to survive. They depend on each other. They have special relationships with other plants and animals in their ecosystem, and those relationships can be extremely complex. So what makes an owl special? We are going to run through a lot of these body parts. We're going to be talking about feathers and wings, ears, their eyes, how they work together, their sharp hooked beak, and lastly, their talons. And then I also have some more challenges for everyone participating later on. So first, before we jump into these body parts, owls are wild animals. That doesn't mean you can feed them. You can see if you can capture them. Don't have one as a pet unless you have very specific and approved permits. They are nocturnal. Nocturnal means that they're awake at nighttime. Humans are diurnal, so there's a little bit of a juxtaposition there. Owls are birds of prey. There are certain features that classify owls as birds of prey, 2 of which are their beak and their talons. They're very carnivorous, so they eat only meat. And a lot of them have great camouflage. That is a challenge later on in the presentation. So first off, feathers and wings. Owls have very specialized types of feathers all over their body. For example, they have down feathers, which are thick, fluffy things that absorb sound frequencies that can keep the animal warm. They also have fringed or tattered feathers, and they also have a comb-like structure on the leading edge of their primary feathers, which you can see right here. Now, if you could feel that, it feels sort of like a plastic comb, a soft plastic comb. This breaks up the wind when they fly, and it's on the leading edge of their wings, so that their sound can't really, or there is no sound when they fly. And that leading edge is right there over that primary feather. So that comb structure that you saw really isn't on every single feather. It's just on that leading edge of the primaries. Primary feathers are on their wings. It's the leading edge. It's the part of the wing that hits the air first. They also have body feathers, tail feathers. They also have those fluff feathers kind of deep down buried underneath those body feathers. And here are some baby owls or owlets with all of that fluff feather showing. And this can show that it keeps the animals warm. It kind of helps camouflage them as well. They also sort of look like Muppets a little bit. Their eyes, owls' eyes, so there are two pictures of skulls on your screen. If you take a closer look at them, they are different skulls, but they're of the same owl. These are from a great horned owl. And if you take a closer look at their eyes, they have a funnel or trumpet shaped socket. The funnel and trumpet shaped sockets help keep the eyes locked. What that means is their huge eyes are locked within their sockets. They can't move them around like a human can. And this also helps them have very, very keen binocular vision. So a lot of carnivores and predators have their eyes facing forward like this, like us too, like people. Having their eyes that face forward on the skull helps give the animal great binocular vision. We talked about that. And it's also great for hunting. They also have avascular retinas. So retina of the eye is the part that holds all the blood vessels in a human eye. So if you look really closely and you're very tired in a mirror, you can see all the very small red blood vessels. Owls don't have those blood vessels, and this prevents shadows and light scattering when they are hunting. So my challenge to you is, can you look like an owl? This is a very short scene where an owl is being held safely, and he's very focused on something, and the hands are turning. So an owl cannot move their eyes in their sockets, in their skull. They have to look fully with their face, with their neck. So my challenge is, can you look like an owl? So the way you would do that is you could have someone stand in front of you, or you could look at your screen and move your head like this while keeping your eyes focused on the screen. Or that's how a human looks. Or you could keep your eyes locked, or try to keep your eyes locked within your skull and turn your head completely to look at something. It's super difficult. It's more difficult than, it sounds easier than it is. If you wanted to take a moment to do that, you can. We're going to move on though. Eyes and ears, a little bit further. A lot of owls have different colored eyes: yellow, orange, brown. The barn owl that you see in the lower right, that is a dark brown eye, not black. But the color of the eyes don't really help or hurt the owl in seeing anything. It's just that species of owl has that particular color of eyes. Their tufts, however, these long feathers on either side of their skull, not all owls have this. This is a great horned owl. The tufts or long feathers can be used to help them camouflage. These are not ears. Their ears are located on the sides of their head, just like humans, but they are asymmetrical, meaning that they're not even on either side like a human's eyes are even. So my next challenge, I guess, just to give you an idea of where owl's ears are, is to put your hands behind your ears like this, so that this will help you hear. Now, if you have headphones in, this might not work. I have headphones in, it's not really working that well. But this is where humans' ears sit. They are symmetrical, they're level. An owl's ears, their right ear is up a little bit higher, and their left ears are just a little bit lower. So they do have ears. Here's proof. They do have ears tucked behind their feathers, and they also have those asymmetrical ears. This is a drawing and a picture of a skull facing forward. Now, if you remember, we were looking at those tunnel-shaped eye sockets. Those have been taken out of this particular skull. So you really can see the right ear and the left ear. So I am going to open up the chat right now. I can get my mouse to work. And my challenge to you guys, or my question to you guys, once I get this open, is to answer this question. Why does an owl have asymmetrical ears? How does this help them? So your chat is at the bottom or the top of your screen. It's a little box that will pop up. Have it set so everyone can participate. This is your very first chat question. And I am getting some answers coming in. for hunting, to hide its ears, to hear above and below, for stereo hearing. Great job. Wow, to pinpoint their prey, excellent. To hear better, wonderful. I love it, you guys are great. I'm gonna leave the chat open just for a second because I do see a lot of answers coming in. I am gonna move forward though in the PowerPoint just so you guys can see. This is a drawing, another drawing, of how those asymmetrical ears are helping them. Remember, their right ear is a little bit higher than their left ear. So having asymmetrical ears helps pinpoint exactly where prey was or is. The sound waves are reaching each ear at different times. So even if an owl were completely blind or hunting at nighttime, pitch black, having large eyes helps them see, but having those asymmetrical ears also helps them pinpoint exactly where prey is because of how the sound is reaching their ears. So great job, everybody. I'm going to close the chat just for now. I'll open it again in a little bit here. So can owls move their head all the way around? This is a poll. So if my moderator, Miss Lauren, could open up the very first poll, I'm going to give a couple seconds just for the poll to be brought up. It should pop up on your screen. Now the question is, can owls move all the way around? It just popped up, it should have. I see a lot of answers coming in. Wow. Just to let you guys know, I have 170 people watching this, and I have over 80 people participating in the poll. This is awesome. So the answers are either all the way around, a complete circle, 3/4 of a circle, half of a circle, 1/4 of a circle. Excellent job, you guys. 60% of you have voted. Awesome. All right, so as more answers are coming in, I won't give you the answer. I'm going to minimize this poll, but I'm going to leave it open. Can owls move their head all the way around? The answer is almost. Those of you who answered 3/4 of a circle, you are correct. So it's 270 degrees, 3/4 of a circle. So let's close that poll. A lot of you were correct. I'm very impressed. Really great job. Just to give you an idea of what this means in terms of humans. Humans have about 7 cervical vertebrae in their neck right here. Owls have double that. Owls have 14 cervical vertebrae in their neck. This helps them circle their heads almost all the way around. It also helps them move their heads from side to side. So here are 2 pictures. The left picture is of burrowing owls, and the right picture is of a barn owl turning their heads almost all the way around and from left to right like this. And we did talk about owls having twice as many vertebrae as humans. Now this is just the cervical vertebrae in their neck. And I did want to show you just a few more very short scenes, videos where owls are practicing this. That was one. This was our very focused owl that we were looking at before. And then this is one of my favorites. Take a look and watch the owl on the right. And he starts with his head all the way on its right and ends with the head almost all the way turning around on the left-hand side. The other owl doesn't really care, but perfect. All right, so I have shared those results with everyone. 73% of you were correct, almost 100 of you. Great job, everybody, I love it. So the answer was 270 degrees. That's how far an owl can move its head almost all the way around, 3/4 of a circle. All right, so moving your head, remember in the beginning I asked you to get a sheet of paper and a pencil. We were going to explain this phenomenon. Here's that focused owl. The phenomenon is owls can move their head back and forth, up and down, and almost all the way around. The explanations, please take a look at them, remember them. I think owls can move their head so much because it helps them blank. Owls have special adapted body parts that help them move their head so much. They are blank. I'm going to make sure that the chat is turned on, and if you would like, you can share some of those thoughts with the rest of the participants. I'm really curious to see if anyone was right, if you got your explanations correct, if you were able to think of those specially adapted body parts, or if you were paying attention, you could write them down, because I did show you quite a few, and there are several. So the chat is open. I'm just making sure you are more than welcome to share your thoughts in the chat. Okay, so moving on, we talked about their eyes, their ears, their neck vertebrae, how they move their head. Let's move on to their talons. This is one of the ways that owls, or one of the reasons that owls are considered birds of prey. They have large, sharp talons for hunting and for defense. If you really look, I love this picture. It's of a barn owl coming in to capture prey. So in terms of hunting, they are able to grasp and really grip their prey. And when they're coming after a prey animal, when they're hunting, they always go feet first, talons first. The rest of their body is shifted behind them. In terms of defense, they can reach up and claw with their talons. They have 4 toes on each foot, 2 toes pointing forward and 2 toes pointing backward, or sorry, 2 toes pointing forward, 1 toe pointing backward. That extra 4th toe there on the side is sort of considered a reversible toe. That outer toe can either be in front or in back. In the picture on the left, you'll see 3 toes forward and the 1 hidden toe behind. But if the owl wants to perch on something, get a better grip of their prey, they can put 2 toes forward and 2 toes back. So that they do have that reversible toe there on the outside. What kinds of owls are there in Southern Nevada? We have a ton in Southern Nevada, but this presentation is all of Nevada. We have even more in all of Nevada. Here are just some of the owls that we have in all of Nevada. This is not all. We're gonna go through them a little bit at a time. I do have my laser pointer up, so on the screen you'll see me moving around the very top left picture. This is a burrowing owl. They live in the ground. This owl right here with the very dark brown eyes, this is called a flammulated owl. They have great camouflage. This is a western screech owl. This down here, we sort of talked about already. This is a barn owl. This owl, very beautiful. This is a great horned owl, one of the most common owls in the entire world right here, great horns. This is a saw-whet owl, very popular in artwork. This owl up here in the right corner, this is a long-eared owl. And last but not least, this owl down here, this is an elf owl. They're pretty rare. We really only see them in the summertime. They're only about 6 inches tall. So there are more species. These are just the ones that are pretty common. The owls that are more likely to be in your neighborhoods or something you might see when you're camping or experiencing nature is this guy, a great horned owl, and a barn owl. And maybe if we're lucky, a burrowing owl. All right, so here's a challenge for you guys. I am going to close the chat just for this activity. This is a very short activity. I do see some comments. I love it. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in the chat. So this activity is very short. It talks about camouflage. We did talk about the tufts of a great horned owl, great horned owl's feathers up here. They help with camouflage. A lot of other colors and patterns on the plumage of an owl can also help them camouflage. Some are better than others. This very short activity is for you to play at home. In every single picture, there is at least one owl. Some are easier to see than others. I will point out every single one. So your challenge is to find the owl, or at least the outline of the owl in every single picture. Like I said, some are easier than others. This picture in particular, I really wanted to point out, look at how excited, or not, this owl is for everyone that he's getting his picture taken. The owl is right here, looking right at the camera. If you found him, good job. Now this is a young owl, this is a fledgling. You can tell because they still have fluff feathers coming up underneath their adult feathers. This is a barn owl. In this picture though, take a look at how well the color and the pattern match the bark on the tree. So here's the owl hidden in the tree. Here are those little ear tufts. This one's pretty easy, but look at the coloring of the plumage. This is a barn owl hidden right here. Now this is a flammulated owl, sort of taking a nap. Looks like we woke him up. The outline of his body is right here. His tufts are shorter on his head here. They're right here, his little tufts. But they're real short and they help him blend in. Now look at the pattern of his plumage and how well that blends into the bark on the tree. Here's one here. This is also a flammulated owl. Now this one may be a little more difficult. I'll give you a couple seconds to find him. He is right here. Now he is tucked in a hole in the tree so you can't see his entire body. This is a great horned owl. You can see his little tufts right here, helping him camouflage. Here's his upper chest. Here's the outline of the owl right here. You can see his talons poking out right down here. Here's his tufts. And here's the outline. And I love this picture because you can really see the color difference of some of these owls hidden in some place you really wouldn't expect to see an owl. So I'm outlining his body right here. There's another burrowing owl. I'm outlining him now. Again, look at how excited or not excited he is to have his picture taken. Now here's the outline of this great horned owl. You can see his talons and toes popping out down here. You can see his yellow eye giving him away and his facial disc right here, which we'll talk about in a minute. The outline is here. Here's that flammulated owl again. This is a picture that is really similar to a picture we saw earlier. I'm just sort of testing everyone's looking and seeking knowledge. Now there are two owls in this picture. This one's pretty obvious. This is a baby, an owlet, and its parent is sitting in the tree behind, right here. Now this picture does have three owls. You can see the adult blending in, camouflaging very well. And then the two owlets, here's one, and here's the other. This is an adult, another great horned, right here. Now you can see in this picture, especially those tufts on top of their head really do help them blend in. Now this is an owl that does not have tufts. Owls that don't have tufts are called round-headed owls. This is an example of a round-headed owl without tufts. You can see the outline of their head pretty clearly. Here's the outline of where they are, where it is. Now this is something that some of our biologists are used to looking for. Now there are two signs that give away that owls are in this picture. There are three. One of the giveaways is right here, down here. This is called whitewash. And this is just owl poop, or bird poop is white. And then this is actually a nest, a nesting site. You can see the little owlets up here. There's 1, 2, and 3. Here's another flammulated owl taking a nap. And here you can see those ear tufts really do help them blend in. So here's the outline kind of hidden behind this leaf. There are 2 owlets taking a nap. And in this picture especially, you can see the coloration, the pattern of the plumage really blending in with the tree, especially right here. The color pattern is really similar. And I believe this is the last picture. This shows how different morphs of owls can be represented just in a really small area. This is a western screech owl. Same species, probably a pair, nesting right next to each other. Here's one, but the color of this one is pretty gray. And then the color of this one is pretty brown. So this just shows you what morphs look like. That one particular species can have a different morph or a very slightly different shade of color in the plumage. All right, great job. I'm sure everyone did an amazing job. I love that activity. It really shows how well that owls can camouflage themselves. Most of them are sleeping, so they're even cuter when you're looking for them. So my next question to you is, where do owls live? So I have a few pictures to show everyone. This is a picture of a great horned owl nesting in a cactus. This is a great horned owl nesting in a tree. So it really shows you how owls can nest and call home in a variety of different nesting sites. These are owlets. These are barn owl owlets. And these guys are nesting in the attic of a barn, aptly named barn owl. And lastly, these are burrowing owls. We did see some pictures of some earlier. These guys will nest in the ground. And these are just examples. Very quickly, how do owls grow up? This is a very short example of a life cycle. So in the pictures that we were looking at, we saw nesting sites. Eggs are laid in nests and nesting sites. Chicks will hatch. Owlets full of fluff feathers, those downy, fluff, warm feathers, are babies. Fledgling owls are owls that are learning how to fly, leaving the nest. And adult owls will repeat the process, finding a mate, pairing for life, and then laying more eggs for the next season. So why is a barn owl very special? Barn owls do play a very special relationship with farmers. They also have a really unique heart-shaped face. That heart-shaped face shows that facial disc, and that's what that heart is outlining. That facial disc helps guide sound to the ears. And remember, the ears are asymmetrical. One's on the upper right, one's on the lower left. So as sound is coming at the owl's face, the sound is reflected or guided into the ears via that disc. They do help farmers. Barn owls' diet is normally about 80 to 85% mice, voles, rodents that eat crops that farmers are planting and harvesting. They love to live in buildings, aptly named the barn owl. They really don't mind having very small confined areas to build or find nesting sites. They also don't mind having a huge, vast area. If you remember some of those owlet pictures of barn owls, they didn't really have a particular nest. They just had a little area. Some owls don't build nests at all. They can take over old nests that other birds have abandoned. They can just scratch a little bit on the ground or in the rocks and call it good. They can bring some soft things to the nest like feathers, but it's not usually typical. And they have this really, really varied lighter color plumage compared to some of the other owls that we've been looking at. Some owls have this deep dark checkerboard pattern that really blends in well with the bark on a tree. Barn owls have this really varied lighter color compared to the darker color on their backside. So they really have a varied color and pattern between the front of their body and the backside. So what does an owl eat? I am going to open up the chat here so you guys can help answer this question. All right, chat is open. So in this example of a food chain, we're looking at the sun growing plants, insects eating the plants, a mouse eating the insect, and an owl, in this case, being the very top of the food chain or the end of the food chain. He is the consumer. He has no predators. My challenge to you is to answer, what else can an owl eat? So I have already given you that mice eat rodents, mice, rats. Ooh, I see some snakes, baby rabbits, rodents, roaches, small birds, eggs, squirrels, gophers. You guys are amazing. That's awesome. Lizards. Some insects, absolutely. Small dogs. Grasshoppers, rabbits. Oh my goodness. Great job, you guys. I am going to push forward. Frogs, excellent. I am going to show you rats, rabbits, mice, rodents, frogs, toads, birds, insects, and lastly, bats. I don't think anyone has ever thought of bats. I have done this presentation quite a few times before this recording today. No one ever thinks of bats, but it's possible. Both are nocturnal. Both are bats are small, flying around. Great job, you guys. Alrighty, so predator and prey relationships, super quick. Here's that food chain again. We can view the entire ecosystem in terms of predators and prey. Here's our owl, top of the food chain. In this example, the prey is the insect, predator is the mouse, but those relationships can shift because a predator in another case can be an owl and the prey can be the mouse. So whenever plants and animals get eaten, whenever prey gets eaten, the animal that's eating them gets energy, and predator and prey roles can shift. So you can see that the mouse can be predator or prey, and that can build us into a food web. So this is a very simplified, believe it or not, food web. Owls at the top of the food chain in this example as well. They don't have very many predators, hardly any at all. My question to you guys, I'm going to leave the chat open for this question. What would happen if the food web that you see on your screen, what would happen if one particular food source were to no longer exist? So I'm gonna do that on the screen for you. I'm gonna cut mice out of the food chain completely. And if you're looking at this food web, foxes, hawks and owls, and snakes are eating mice. So let's put a big X over that mouse. Let's say, for example, that all the mice in this food web are gone. That part has deteriorated. What happens to the entire food web? So if you're looking at your screen, there's a big X over that mouse. I have blocked out the arrows of energy leading from the mice or mouse to the foxes, the hawks and owls, and the snakes, because those are its predators. I'm looking at the chat right now. I see some great answers. It would break down, it would collapse, the food web would collapse, great. Less food for predators, more plants. More vegetation, excellent. The animals would have to change their diet. That's a great thought. Excellent job, you guys. So my next question to you, and this is poll number 2, so I'm going to close the chat. I'm very impressed with everyone's participating though. Thank you so very much. So I've closed the chat. If Miss Lauren, my moderator, could open up the second poll. Which is more stable? And this is my question for everyone who's participating now. Remember, I have 170 of you guys, so everyone should participate. Which is more stable, a food chain or a food web? If you're not sure, that's totally okay. I see 20 of you have participated, 50 of you have participated, 80 of you are participating, great. A couple more minutes here. I love seeing the polls pop up. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to leave the poll open just for a couple more seconds and I'm going to continue on. So far, 76% of you say that a food web is more stable. I would have to agree with you simply because if one part of the food chain deteriorates, these other small features of the food web can expand and can lean on each other. So instead of one little part collapsing the entire food web, it can shift. There is some molding, there is some variable changing that can happen. So great job, everyone. I'm very impressed. Okay, so how on earth do we study owls? This is one of my favorite things to look at. These are pictures taken from a wildlife camera. A lot of these cameras are motion detecting cameras, so we'll put them up where we think wildlife is found. They'll snap a photo when movement happens. Sometimes it's a bug, sometimes it's actual animals moving across or finding home or something, and sometimes we capture some pretty unique scenes. For example, this is a picture of 4 burrowing owls doing their thing, you know, hanging out. And in this next picture, you can see that one of the owls has clearly noticed that there's something in addition to its home. And if you really look, you can see that the burrow in this case isn't something that's dug. It's something that is in the ground, probably already found, maybe cleaned up a little bit by scratching, but really isn't formed by the burrowing owl. In this picture, the next picture, you can see that the burrowing owl in this case has really found the camera. He's being up close and personal, checking it out for itself. But you can see the burrow itself is also something that's not really dug. It looks like a pipe that the animals have taken over. You can see all this whitewash on the top and on the sides. This owl in the back is not impressed. And this owl in the very front has clearly found exactly where the lens is. So let's go into, we talked about how we study owls by wildlife cameras, but what is an owl pellet? I'm sure a lot of you elementary school students know what owl pellets are. We find them all the time. Here's a picture of a group that I took on a trail. We did find them just off to the side. This is where owl pellets were found. We actually found 9 owl pellets that day. Here's a group checking them out, not touching them. We were very lucky to find owl pellets that day. We didn't see any owls though. So this is one of the owl pellets close up after it had been sterilized. I would encourage you to not touch owl pellets if you see them while you're exploring nature. The owl pellets that we bring into the classroom and dissect with the students have been sterilized. They're safe. These pellets that you just find out in nature are not sterilized, so I would encourage you not to touch them. But how is an owl pellet formed? Here's my owl here. We're going to go through the process very, very quickly. Very first, the animal is swallowed. If it's small enough, head first. That sharp hooked beak can also be used to rip apart the animal's prey and swallow pieces of meat. But usually the owl can swallow their prey head first. They move the prey, the food, will move into something called the proventriculus, or also called the first stomach. This little area, this first stomach, secretes mucus and hydrochloric acid to start the process of breaking the prey down, breaking the food down into something more digestible. The food then moves into the second stomach, also called the ventriculus. The digestible portions, the meat, all the things that can be digested will move on to the rest of the body for nutrients. The things that can't be digested, the bones and the fur, will be compacted in this second stomach, this ventriculus, and formed into a pellet. Last but not least, the owl will regurgitate the pellet. It will move back through its system the way it came, and the owl will regurgitate the owl pellet out. I have some pictures for you to share of what that looks like. What we can learn from an owl pellet, though, is what they eat. And we do that by either looking at the owls eating something, which can be really difficult. Here are 2 pictures of an owl eating and then regurgitating. But we can also look at the pellets themselves. This is what they look like close up. With some of the students, we will actually wear all of our personal protective equipment, safety gloves, goggles, and we will very carefully go through and look for those undigestible portions that are found in an owl pellet. Those are bones, fur, and you can actually see from one pellet, one student found 3 skulls, 1 jaw, 1 scapula, which is the shoulder blade, 1 forelimb, 2 forelimbs, 1 hind limb, and 6 ribs. So just from one little owl pellet, this student was able to figure out this owl ate these 3 animals that day because there were 3 skulls found. So here's what they look like. We're going to go through the process very, very quickly. You can start to see when breaking the pellet down very gently, some of those bones start to pull through and poke their way through. So you can see some tweezers in the background. We are wearing gloves. We do have toothpicks and popsicle sticks, napkins, cleaning supplies, so we are very safe about it. This is one of the pictures of the skulls and the bottom jaw, which is found right here, and the little teeth that were attached to the rodent skull. And here's everything sort of laid out. You can see the skull here, the upper part found here, jaw bones. Here's that scapula. Here's some vertebrae, actually. So from looking at, very carefully looking at these owl pellets, you can see what the owl is eating. So lastly, how can we help owls? My challenge to you guys is to talk to your family, talk to your neighbors about what you've learned today about owls. Hopefully you learned something. If you see an owl, just look with your eyes. Never try and approach or try and touch or capture or feed. You know, after all, they are wild animals. Be quiet and calm. Usually owls are listening to their surroundings with their asymmetrical ears and looking with their huge eyes. So you can build a nesting box. A lot of owls love nesting boxes. You can buy them as kits. You can get them already put together. It's a great family excursion. It's great to do with your scouts, your class, your entire family. I would suggest that you ask where to put the nesting box. There are places that that you can place a nesting box that's safer for the owl. If you don't want to put it in your yard, you can put it other places. I would contact other organizations. They do have places set aside where you can place them, but talk with them first instead of just placing it in a nesting box wherever you like. Don't bother the owl, and don't try and capture or hurt the owl. Like I said, also do not feed. So I am going to let you guys hang out for just a second. I am going to make sure that the chat is closed. Lauren has done an amazing job answering questions throughout the entire presentation. I really want to thank her for that. I am going, yeah, the chat box is closed. I am going to open up the question and answer box just to see if there are any questions that we may have missed or something that I needed to cover a little bit more completely. So I have the question and answer box open. These are some great questions. Very first, what can we do to encourage nesting owls in your yards? Very first, I would say that you can build a nesting box. A lot of owls really like to nest high up in locations. So in trees, in cacti, not on your roof because it's too warm, it gets a lot of sun. Why do owls bounce up and down? I would assume that you're talking about their heads moving up and down. The answer to that is a lot of times they're listening for their surroundings. So we talked about owls' ears being asymmetrical, one ear being on the upper right, one ear being on the lower left. And by moving their head around, bouncing up and down, they can adjust how that sound is being received, and they can get a better idea of their surroundings just by that. I do have a question here by Kyle that says, how do owls die? That is a great question because we talked about owls being the top of the food chain. Owls do die. It is part of the natural system in nature. They die of old age. Some owls can get sick. It is a natural part of the ecosystem. And it is something to be sad about, but at the same time, it is natural. I am reading some of these questions. They are great. It says, I dissected an owl at summer camp. Why are the bones compressed? That's a great question. If you remember when we were going through how an owl pellet is formed, that second stomach, that ventriculus, that another name for that is also called the gizzard. A lot of birds have that. The gizzard is lined with really thick, strong muscles. So as digestible parts are being passed to the rest of the body, the undigestible portions, the fur and the bones, are being compressed by all of those muscles within the gizzard into something really hard, tight little pellet before it's regurgitated. It's easier for the owl to regurgitate something that's harder and more compressed that way too. It's safer. What is usually the diameter of a pellet? Usually 2 inches, etc. The answer to that, I don't really have one. The diameter of the pellets that we dissect with the students, that we go into their classroom and we dissect owl pellets with them, it's normally between 1 inch and 2 inches. Those pellets come from from barn owls, but other birds of prey also make pellets. For example, eagles make pellets. Falcons make pellets, and depending on the size of the bird can affect the size of the pellet. The bigger the bird, the bigger the pellet. How fast does a barn owl fly? It depends on what they're doing. That's a really great question. They can glide, they can dive. I actually don't have the answer to that. I am being stumped. I'm very sorry. But that is a really great question to research. In fact, I'm going to put my contact information on the screen so that you can answer your question. I am also very curious. If you have an owl box, do you have to clean it or sterilize it? The answer is no. Owls and birds in general are pretty messy. They have bird dander. They have feathers that they're losing constantly. You know, every year, adult owls will lose feathers and then regrow them. Not all at once, of course, but a little at a time. And those feathers can be used within the nest. They can shove out the feathers. They can use other things that they find within the ecosystem, within their habitat, that they can use in the nest to help create a soft environment for their eggs. So you don't have to sterilize it. You don't have to clean it. I would say that if you have a nesting box and it hasn't been active for about 2 to 3 years, sure, take it down, sterilize it, clean it, and then put it right back up. There are some owls in the western part of the United States that are endangered. The question is if there are any owls in Nevada are endangered, but I would rather answer the entire western side. There are owls that are endangered. And this question is for Robbie and Olivia. I would suggest researching it, just because that list of endangered animals and threatened animals, because those things are very different, changes all of the time. Because this webinar is being recorded, I don't want to give you information now that may change in a year or may change in 6 months. So I would suggest looking online, go to Red List. It is a website. It's an official federal website that lists all of the species that are being studied, and it gives the current listing status, either threatened, endangered, not of concern, or least concern. So it just kind of depends. I hope that answer will work for you. I don't want to give information that's relevant now, but will change in about a year or 6 months or something. What kind of owls live near Henderson? That's where I live, actually. The most common owls that I have heard and see in Henderson are great horned owls, burrowing owls, and barn owls. I haven't actually seen any other owls, not that they're not there. It's just that I'm not seeing or hearing them. What preys upon owls? Injured owls, which does happen in nature. Any animal could potentially prey on an owl that is carnivorous. So coyotes, foxes, mountain lions. I wouldn't necessarily say that these animals will actively hunt an owl, but if an owl is injured or can't get away, or maybe the nestling falls out of the tree and is injured, if that is the case and you see it, the best thing to do is to leave the owlet or the fledgling alone, because mom and dad are still around, still feeding the baby, and they need to learn how to fly. But it's always possible that another animal might come along. Lot of questions. Owls can be very territorial. They really can be. In fact, birds in general are really territorial. There are ways that they show their territory. One way in particular, which I don't have a picture of, which humans can also incorporate when we haze animals that we don't want around, like coyotes. When you haze a coyote, for example, the goal is to make them feel as unwelcome as possible. So you're making yourself look big, loud, you can put your arms out, you can sway back and forth, you can start yelling, making loud noises. When an owl becomes territorial, they do exactly the same thing. They're showing something or someone that they're not welcome here. So what they do is they raise up their feathers, make themselves look big. They can clap their beak really loudly, so they're making loud noises. And they can also sway or hover back and forth while standing on the ground, so they make themselves look big. So yes, they are territorial, and that is some of the ways that they stand their ground. Owls do have a way to excrete waste, just like other animals do. A common misconception is pellets are excreted out the back end, so to say, when in actuality, owls and other birds of prey like eagles and falcons and hawks that we talked about earlier, they will regurgitate the pellets, but the digestible portions will be processed just like food is, and then they will excrete as a normal animal would. Great questions. There is a question here that says, why do so many owls get hit by cars? The answer to that is a lot of animals get hit by cars. It's not just owls, in fact. Birds can sometimes see windows and not understand that there's something there. So they can be hit by cars that way. Crossing the road is always difficult. So I wouldn't necessarily say that owls in general get hit by cars more often than not. I would say that animals in general get hit by cars. But you know, they're crossing the road, they're moving from point A to point B, they're going back home, they're living in a space with humans, and part of human living is roads and driving on them with cars. So it's just another reminder that we need to be extra careful when driving so that we can help protect these owls and the animals. Let's see, there are a lot of questions. Oh, this was a good one. How long is it from the time they eat until they produce a pellet? It could be a day. They could produce a pellet in one day. How many eggs are typically laid at one time? Depends on the species of owls. It can be usually between 3 and 5. In really great years where there's a ton of resources, a lot of food, it could be more. If there's not a lot of resources, sometimes the owls will lay less than 3, but typically it's between 3 and 5 eggs. That's actually called a clutch. So a clutch size is between 3 and 5. Great question. There are some questions here that involve so much time for me to hang on and answer. For example, what diseases do owls get, and how long do they live? Those are questions that I'm afraid I can't answer, simply because every species of owl is different. The number of diseases that owls can get, for example, they can have in the process of regurgitating a pellet, for example, that area can become clogged. They can get sick just like humans can, with different diseases, of course. They can get food poisoning. They can eat a mouse, for example, that has been poisoned. They can get mites. They can get all kinds of stuff. So that's a question I'm afraid I won't be able to spend all that time answering, because I know it's already been a full hour that you've been hanging out with me today. However, I would encourage you to research it on your own. Where would we possibly see flammulated owls? That's a great question. Flammulated owls really love nesting where there are woody trees. So not necessarily the desert. I would go up into the pinyon pine sagebrush life zone, maybe even a little bit higher. They're not actually really common here in the southern region, but in the western region and the eastern region of Nevada, they're not extremely common, but we do have them. This question is for Nikki. Do we have snowy owls in Nevada? We do not. We do not have snowy owls in Nevada. It's much too warm. We do, this is a question for Kathleen. Are there gray owls in Nevada? We do have great horned owls and flammulated owls that have a gray pattern or gray plumage, gray coloration. But there is an owl called a great gray owl. It's one of the largest owls in the world. We do not have great gray owls in Nevada. This question is for Christine. How do they drink water, ponds or sprinklers? They do get a lot of water from the food that they eat. They can also go down to a stream or a pond and actually drink. Like all other birds, they will dip their head, gather water into their lower beak, raise their head up and tip their head back, and the water will go down their throats. I'm reading some of these questions, they're great. It's actually very difficult to attract owls. This question is about attracting owls. The best suggestion I can give you is to provide a site for nesting. Like I said earlier, owls won't typically build a nest from scratch. They can take over a nest. They can, whether that is from another bird that has built a nest or a nesting box, or they can make a couple scratches in the dirt and call it good. So it just sort of depends. Providing that nesting is key for attracting owls, but it is very hard. And like I said, every species is different. So certain species like screech owls, for example, this question is on western screech owls, they might eat more smaller rodents and smaller birds, smaller frogs, and also insects, compared to a great horned owl, which can almost eat anything. So providing that nesting area, that nesting site, is only one part of the equation. You also have to provide food, but that can be really difficult as well. How do owls sleep? I am so glad that someone asked this question. And I know that we're running out of time, and I think this might be the last question. So the question was, how do owls sleep? The answer is they do sleep with their eyes closed. During the day, they take very short naps. They kind of tuck themselves away into either a nest site, a roost site, which can be literally anywhere that they can find that tucks their body away in a semi-hidden area. They do have a lot of really great camouflage ability. So they're blending in, hidden away from the animals that are awake during the day. And when they sleep, they actually have 3 types of eyelids. The top eyelid and the bottom eyelid will close together when they sleep. Typically, the lower eyelid will pop up more so to cover the entire eye. That third eye is called a nictitating membrane. It just keeps the eye moist. It's actually sort of see-through, but when they sleep, their lower eyelid will cover the majority of the eye. Like humans, if you blink, you only have one main eyelid from the top. Owls have a top, a bottom, and then that third, a nictitating membrane. That was a really great question. Some owls can lay eggs every single year. The question was, how often do they lay eggs? I'm reading some of these questions, they're wonderful. The time where you would most likely hear an owl would be around dawn and dusk. A lot of birds do what we call roll call. So at the beginning of the evening and at the end of the night, in the morning, a lot of birds will sit and rest, either waking up or going to sleep, depending on if they're diurnal or nocturnal. Nocturnal means you're awake at nighttime. Diurnal means you're awake during the day. So if you're waking up in the morning, you are waking up, you're stretching your wings, you're stretching your legs, and you're tweeting, you're making these calls. And just to see who else is in the neighborhood, what other birds might be new nesters. If you're an owl and you're waking up at the beginning of your evening or going to bed in the morning, you might do the same thing. You're getting ready or waking up, you're seeing what other birds are in the neighborhood, seeing if there are new nesters, listening for other owls, listening for other animals. So I would say that early evening, maybe sometimes in the morning, you may hear some screeching, some hooting. I'm also seeing a lot of thank yous. Thank you so much for participating. I had, I think at most, just over 170 participants. So you guys did awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, this is a good one. How long do owlets stay in the nest? Some species are different than others, but an owl will typically be full grown by about 6 to 10 weeks, depending on the species, of course. And then the adult plumage will come in after that. But a fledgling is at the point where an owl will leave the nest. Owlets don't leave the nest. Those are baby owls or chicks. You know, baby owls are called owlets. The next stage in development is called a fledgling, and that's when they leave the nest. And that can mean, you know, as long as they're starting to get their adult plumage, typically in spring, early summer. So maybe right now when you're watching this with me. They don't need to drink water all the time. Like I said earlier, they do get a lot of their water from the food that they drink or the food that they eat. They can also go down and drink water, but they don't have to do it every day. It depends on the weather. If it's a drought period, if it's very dry, they may need to drink more water, or if they don't eat that day, they may need to drink water. However, if it's humid or if it's during a rainstorm, they may not need to drink water that day. Okay, it is about an hour and 10 minutes after we've started. I am afraid I'm not going to get to all of these questions. There are so many. Lauren did an amazing job. She answered over 80 questions from you guys. I still have quite a few open. I actually have answered a lot of them just by talking with you and reading some of your chats in the chat box. So thank you so much. I'm going to leave my contact information up. We are on the last screen of the PowerPoint, so my email is on there. Please contact me at any time. Thank you so much for hanging out and learning with us. We very much appreciate it. These are really fun for us, so it's really nice to see so many people participating. All of these can be found on our YouTube channel. After the fact, you may have to give us a couple days to get it uploaded, but you can watch this at any time. You may not be able to see the polls or anything like that, but it was really fun to see how many people were getting them right. So thank you so much again. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for learning with us. Hopefully you will see me or one of our other staff members giving the next webinar. All right. Thank you so much, you guys. I'm going to shut this down. All right. Thank you so much.